Trước khi kết thúc bản tin hôm nay, Thu Thảo xin mời quý vị hãy theo dõi phần phóng sự ngắn của Vietface TV ngày hôm nay. Kính thưa quý vị khán giả, sáng hôm nay thứ Tư ngày 21 tháng 9, 2016, Thu Thảo và Vietface TV đã được mời tham dự buổi ra mắt chiến dịch bảo vệ di trú và biên giới, tức là Immigration and Border Protection của chính phủ Liên bang Úc. Nhân cơ hội này, Thu Thảo đã có phần phỏng vấn đặc biệt Thiếu tướng Major General Andrew Bottrell và Đại sứ Andrew Kolesinowski. Ông Kolesinowski là đại sứ phụ trách chương trình chống buôn người của Úc, một trong những chương trình mà chính phủ Malcolm Turnbull tự hào là sự thành công trong chiến dịch hạn chế thuyền nhân tị nạn đến Úc bằng đường biển.
They may not be expecting, but they need to know what that reality is. And if they are fully informed about that situation, then they can make better decisions in the light of that information.
As we say, we want them to come by Qantas aircraft, not by leaky boat. And that way, 100% of them arrive safely, and that's very important.
Thu Thảo xin trân trọng kính chào quý vị khán giả của đài truyền hình Vietface TV Úc Châu đến với chương trình phóng sự cộng đồng. Kính thưa quý vị, hiện giờ thì Thu Thảo đang có mặt tại công ty Multi Connection mà Vietface TV được mời đến tham dự với sự ra mắt một cái chiến dịch phòng chống vấn nạn buôn người. Và kính thưa quý vị, bây giờ Thu Thảo xin mời quý vị hãy theo dõi phần phỏng vấn đặc biệt đối với hai vị khách đại diện cho Joint Agency Task, và đó là thứ nhất là Thiếu tướng Andrew Bottrell và người thứ hai là Đại sứ Andrew Kolesinowski. Good morning, I'm Thu Thảo from the Vietface TV Australia. Good morning to you first, Major General Andrew Bottrell, and to you, Mr. Ambassador. Andrew also, Kolesinowski.
Very good.
Okay, firstly, I would like to congratulate both of you on the Operation Sovereign Border, which the government highly consider is a great success. However, not everyone agrees. Now, the Sydney Morning Herald has stated, and I quote, "Australia badge of honour is a badge of shame." What is your response?
Well, Thu Thảo, firstly, thank you for inviting us to join you for a conversation. As officials, we don't comment we don't make comment on the utility or the policy itself. Our role is to deliver that policy, to implement that policy. But what I can say is that in terms of Operation Sovereign Borders, what it has done, it has had a high degree of success at closing down the people smuggling model to Australia, and it has stopped people dying at sea. And I know there are accusations that that's a convenient excuse, but there have been a lot of Australian men and women in the Australian Border Force and the Australian Defence Force who were out there risking their lives to save the lives of other people who were being put at risk by people smugglers, and that situation no longer exists. So for that very reason, and there's not one Australian man or woman in the Australian Defence Force or the Australian Border Force who've been involved in this, there's not one of them that would say it's the wrong thing to do, because they have seen the results of having to pick the bodies of men, women and children out of the water. So in that regard, it has been very successful, and I think issues that Andrew can talk about in relation to our humanitarian program and some of the events that are being announced in New York at the moment, I think put into context what the Australian government is trying to do in terms of securing our borders so that we can continue to be a more generous country in our special humanitarian program.
Okay, thank you.
Thu Thảo, can I respond to that as well?
Sure.
I read the article that you referred to, and I don't think the article was talking about the policy generally that we should not be stopping people smugglers. I think it was criticising the fact that the regional processing centres have not yet been resolved. People have not yet been resettled from Manus and Nauru. And that's true, of course, and that is part of the Operation Sovereign Borders that hasn't been finalised yet, but it will be. We understand, the government has said many times, that Manus and Nauru are not permanent solutions for those people. The ones that are found to be refugees will need to be resettled in a third country, and those that are found not to be refugees need to return home. And that is still happening. If it was easy, we would have done it by now. But as we know from the discussions that are happening in New York now, the whole world is grappling with how to deal with irregular migration, not just Australia. But we're very close to a solution, and I believe we will achieve it. So I think the rest of the program has been well received by the Australian public. Stopping people drowning at sea is a positive. Stopping illegal criminal syndicates from smuggling people is a positive. And increasing our refugee intake and our humanitarian assistance overseas is a big positive. And all of that is possible because of the policies that have been put in place.
And above all, the safety of the people at sea, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And as I said earlier this morning, safety is one of our key issues that we try to keep in the forefront of our mind. Whether it's the safety of our men and women who are out there trying to save the lives of others, or those vulnerable men, women and children who people smugglers convince to get onto an unsafe boat. We're concerned about the safety of all of them. So that's absolutely front and centre. And by shutting down that illegal people smuggling trade has stopped other people getting onto boats, and by that it has become a safer solution.
Yeah. Well, in addition to the detention centre issue, Minister Peter Dutton had considered mistakes made in relation to the detention centre in Nauru and Manus Island. Do you think there will be mistakes made in the Operation Sovereign Border? Would there be any?
Well, when I explain the success or otherwise of the current policy, I typically describe that it's a complete system, and that there's not one piece of the current policy that stands alone, and that it is all connected. So regional processing is an important part of that system. So it does create a deterrent effect because what it's done is it's taken off the table what people smugglers are trying to sell. They're trying to sell settlement in Australia as an outcome. By the government putting in place regional processing, what that is saying is that, firstly, if people can get through our deterrence framework, and it's increasingly harder because we have more boats, we have more planes, we have better knowledge, we have greater cooperation with countries like Indonesia, like Sri Lanka, like Vietnam and others, where we have better knowledge of what is happening. So the likelihood of getting to Australia in the first place is reduced. If they do get through that deterrence framework and they are sent to Manus Island and Nauru, they'll be assessed there for any claims for protection. If they are found to be a refugee, they still won't be settled in Australia. So it is part of the system, just as our international engagement is, just as our strategic communication efforts. This is part of our effort to try and fully inform people about the reality that they will face if they engage a people smuggler. That firstly, they won't be able to get through our deterrence system, and secondly, if they do end up at a maritime border, they will be returned if they don't trigger any of those protection obligations that we've signed up to under the UN Conventions for Refugees.
So if they returned, they won't be persecuted?
Well, and I know the point, particularly in the Vietnamese context, is a very important one, and both Andrew and I have engaged with the Vietnamese officials for the return of the last 3 boats from Vietnam that have come, and we were engaged in the negotiation. And the Vietnamese officials were at pains to make sure, and they were genuinely concerned for the well-being of these individuals. So they saw the people on the first boat that we dealt with under this context was back in, I think it was April last year. They very much saw these people as victims, and they were genuinely concerned, and we certainly got the sense that they were genuinely concerned for the well-being of these individuals. So they impressed upon us their desire that we looked after them as well as they could. We clearly have some obligations as well. The non-refoulement obligation, where we're not able to, we're prohibited from returning people to a country where they'd be persecuted. We actually, the Vietnamese officials, the Vietnamese government put in writing that they would not be persecuted for their illegal departure. Right. But what they did preserve the right to do, as Australia does, is to prosecute through the legal system anyone that they might identify as being an organiser of a venture. So, and that's what has happened. And Andrew has subsequently been to Vietnam. You might have some comments about the rest of that.
No, I've been to Vietnam many times this year. I've met many times with our counterpart, Major General Biên, with Minister To Lam. They have repeatedly reassured us that people who come on these boats, when they return to Vietnam, will not be prosecuted or persecuted. And I have to say, we have a high degree of confidence that undertaking has been honoured. The ones who, as the General has said, have been organisers have been prosecuted, and the last ones have been given a period of home detention. In Australia, it's the same situation. If someone does people smuggling and is convicted, then they're punished because they are putting people's lives at risk.
Right, right. So in that particular issue, I would like to ask both of you. Now, back in April 2015, 46 Vietnamese boat people were returned.
Yes.
On the agreement, they won't be persecuted or prosecuted. But yet, at least four people have been persecuted and still in jail. Now, do you say that's a mistake of Australia for relying on the promise of the Vietnamese communist government?
No, the promise was kept. Of the 46, 42 are not in jail. That was the promise. But the four that were found guilty of being organisers have been punished,
right,
and they've received a term of imprisonment. The second boat that came, also with 46 people, I think only 2 have been punished, and they have received only home detention. So, I feel sorry for those people, but they made a decision to organise an illegal venture to Australia, which was illegal under Vietnamese law and illegal under Australian law. And some of the people on that boat were as young as 1 year of age. I mean, they didn't make any decision to get on that boat, and they nearly lost their lives as a consequence. So it is a very serious matter. So I'm not critical of the Vietnamese government for wanting to dissuade other people from organising ventures. But the ordinary people, the ones who are just passengers, they have not been prosecuted, and that's important.
Perhaps a useful comparison. Just recently, several months ago, we had a people smuggler extradited from Indonesia to Australia, and he was prosecuted through our legal system and was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment for organising people smuggling. So we are very tough on people smugglers as well, and so I think there is a discrimination between due legal process and persecution. And what we're seeing, what we believe that we're seeing in Vietnam, is prosecution through the legal process for organising the illegal activity, which is different from what some groups are perhaps claiming.
Right. Okay.
And importantly too, Vivian, the people who have gotten on these boats, they were not making any claims of political persecution. They weren't claiming that they were political refugees. These were fishermen who said that because of activities of another country in the region, they have been excluded from their traditional fishing grounds. So they wanted to come to Australia for economic reasons, which we understand. But we have other avenues for Vietnamese to come to Australia who want to, come as economic migrants. And we take many thousands of Vietnamese every year legally. But if we take these people by boat who have no political claims, then it undermines the legal process. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that Vietnamese can continue to come to Australia through the normal channels which exist.
And that's the other reason why we're doing this at the moment, why we're reaching out to the broad diaspora communities across Australia, because it was clear that a number of these people have turned up without the full knowledge of the situation that they would face. So I don't think that they fully appreciated that when they turned up at our maritime border, that they would be assessed and then turned around if they all returned, if they didn't trigger any of those protection obligations. And I know parts of our history have been different. That different policies have existed at different times, but this is the policy that exists now, and I think will be this way for many, many years to come. And it's important that we try to help people to understand all of that information so that they can make the most informed decision that they can.
Yeah, all right. Look, thank you so much for giving your time to answer these questions. And Vietface TV wish you all the best with Operation Orange Borders.
Thank you, Tu Tao. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Và kính thưa quý vị, vừa rồi là phần phỏng vấn đối với hai vị khách mời tới đây trong cái chương trình phòng chống buôn người. Thu Thảo xin cảm ơn sự quan tâm theo dõi của quý vị và hẹn gặp lại quý vị trong chương trình kỳ tới.